Shaun, the behavior change coach, here for another game of Always Another Game podcast. And today we are going inside an athlete's mind that's going to share us how she transfers the skill from sport into real life. Today I have with me a fellow LinkedIn friend, Bailey Walters. Bailey, how's it going?
Good, thanks, Shaun. How are you doing?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. I'm excited about this because we've only come across this very recently. You put up a post about you doing Jiu Jitsu. And I was like, how have we not spoke about this? Because there's such a huge carryover from sport into what also, sorry, everybody, Bailey is also a fellow coach. We have a lot of similarities in what we do coaching wise. I'm sure she'll share a bit more about that today, but it was the perfect opportunity for me to have you on to share how you transfer the skills.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure to be here. I think the Jiu Jitsu thing takes people by surprise, especially on LinkedIn. I always get a good amount of surprised responses to it.
Yeah, we've had so martial arts wise, we've had a couple of black belts on in karate was one, and kickboxing I believe was the other one. And again, one of them I knew about it from LinkedIn, the other one I didn't. And I do think it's so important for any coaches or anybody out there to share the sporting side of things. I used to put it in all my CVs. It shows that you can work as a team. It shows, these certain qualities that maybe people who don't play sports aren't aware of or have kind of like that natural response. So I think it's so important that we do put it out there, because now look at us. We can now talk on a podcast.
Exactly.
So what I love everybody to know right from the beginning, to get to know you a little bit more, is who is Bailey Walters?
Who is Bailey Walters? She is a 24-year-old Kiwi, so living in the UK, but all the way from New Zealand, and she just loves helping people, and that's really what she wants to do with her life.
Yeah, and I suppose we'll get into that in a bit, because obviously with doing the coaching now, that's a huge asset to want to be able to help people, because a lot of people fall into it because maybe they're good at training. They just like working out. I don't know how you feel, actually, because I got into PT because I got a PT. And then I was like, oh, I could do this alongside my ice hockey because I can run my own hours and I kind of like training for sport. And then it's led me down to the path to where I am now. What was it for you that got you started with it?
I think that's quite common. Mine was a little bit different because I came from a sporting background and I actually wanted to pursue like professional sports coaching or biomechanics and to be part of like a coaching team. But in New Zealand, especially, coaching teams like don't make a lot of money. So from a practical standpoint, I needed to do something alongside. So I was doing personal training while I was at university. And then it's really hard to get into like professional coaching. So PT kind of took off and it was really rewarding. So I just ended up kind of pivoting and sticking with that instead.
Yeah, I feel you on that one, because I wanted to do it in ice hockey, exactly the same thing over here. Not heavily funded, it's an expensive sport, but anything additional on top of like the ice time and the subs, it's just a lot of money for parents that they don't necessarily invest in the kids off the ice. It's got a lot better. But I was the same. No, it was either they didn't want to invest or that they didn't understand the importance of sports performance training. So I was the same as you. I just kind of fell into the niche that worked for me personal training wise. And now I do coach, but I don't coach sports. I'm slowly getting back into it. But yeah, you can see how sometimes you feel like you're kind of going one way and it can easily go into another direction.
Yeah, they are so easy to interchange. Obviously, you're dealing with a lot of the same problems. It's just the people you deal with are slightly different in mindset and goals and aspirations. It's just a different level.
Yeah. So we're coming, well, not obviously now you've said you're now in the UK, coming all the way over from New Zealand. That's not a small move.
No, it's not.
What led to that change?
To be honest, I had always dreamed of living abroad. I kind of grew up thinking that the world is so big and I wanted to experience every part of that I can. And I was just lucky to be able to come to the UK. My granddad was born here, so I have an ancestry visa. I can stay if I want to, which I probably won't, but to have that experience, like, means everything to me.
Yeah. So how long have you been over here now?
Almost 2 years. 2 years next month.
And not planning to stick around?
No.
Have you got somewhere in mind then? Would it be back home, or would it be going like to see the world more?
It's definitely not back home. It would be to continue seeing the world, so maybe do a stint somewhere in Europe, even Southeast Asia. I just need somewhere sunny, and the UK is
We're not bringing that. We are definitely not bringing that. So that's really interesting, because I do like kind of moving towards the coaching element toward the end of the conversation. But what's interesting there, and what I'd love to know, because I've got a little bit of history in this, is so if you were then to go and move over to somewhere in Asia or something like that, how would that work with your coaching? Do you base yourself all online now, or is it a bit of a mixture?
It's still a bit of a mixture. So I do have personal training clients, but they've been with me for like the whole time I've been in the UK. And so they're quite long-standing clients. And while I've had them, I've been trying to build online more, because I know that ideally I do want to leave, and I can't be starting from scratch every single time I move to a new location, because that's a rough ride.
And that's exactly it. So when I started PT, I was like, oh, well, I can take this anywhere. And you can't. You build a foundation, and if you move away, you have a stronger foundation, but you still have to find a whole new client base, and they don't know you from the next PT. So it's so hard to move it around. What the online space has done, it's given us a place that we can travel and work abroad, which is fantastic. You know, if you've got the option to do that, we now are in a position to do that more than we ever have been.
Yeah, it is such a blessing. Like, I'm so grateful that I have my in-person clients, but I'm even more grateful that I have the ability to keep doing what I love when I leave.
Yeah. Now, what I'm really interested to know, because I've grown up around English sport, UK sport. Now, many people will know that New Zealand have a solid foundation in, I would say, maybe just a few sports. I think it's got a lot bigger. All Blacks being the one that most people would know. The netball, my wife plays netball, so I know how good the New Zealand team is in netball. The cricket team has come up. What do you think it is? Because it's not a big country. So what do you think it is that makes them so powerful and dominant in those certain sports?
I would put it down to, one, genetics. Like, a lot of Kiwi athletes are genetic freaks, but our grassroots program is everything in New Zealand. From the moment you're 5, like, you're playing Saturday sport. Sport is ingrained in schools, and it's such a big part of curriculum and the way they bring kids up, that it just breeds this culture like nothing else. And especially since moving to the UK, I did look into like coaching sports teams, and I've done some work here with a few youth programs, and it's just so different. The mentality is different. The investment that coaching programs get here is different. Like, in New Zealand, we funnel so much money into sports because we know it keeps kids healthy and it keeps them off the streets, and we take a lot of pride in that. So I think it's a whole like 10-15 year process that most kids go through that creates these great teams and athletes.
And you mentioned mentality. What do you think is the difference then? Because I've seen it in English sports teams versus others, especially in ice hockey as well. I don't think we're strong mentally to play the game, but in terms of that psychology of sport, I think it's different. So you've been on both sides. What do you see is something that either the New Zealand organizations are doing or that we're missing over here?
I think a key difference is that in New Zealand, we have a we mentality when it comes to sports. We're not thinking about our own individual performance. You're always taught to think about team first. How can you make everyone around you better? How can you uplift everyone instead of how can you be the best person on the team? Which I think I've seen quite a bit in the UK with sports in general, and just like everyday life mentality is a bit more selfish. But in New Zealand, yeah, it's definitely how can we be the best team together? Like how can we pull the person that's at the lowest up to our level instead of wanting to outdo everyone else.
Yeah, you can see that. I guess that if we're talking rugby, purely because I guess everybody knows it, if we look at like the haka, for instance, that is a unified performance. And yeah, I can see how that makes sense, because you talk about certain nations and you can pick out certain players, right? Sometimes when you look at, I'm not a big rugby fan, and I've known of Jonah Lumu, but other than that, but at the same time, you have a whole group of outstanding players. Similar when I've watched the New Zealand netball team play, again, a couple of standout players, but everybody looks the same. So I think you could be right there, that teamwork element and no one standing above the others, you all go in together. I think that's a very, very healthy thing to have. Now, you mentioned something, kind of the questions I sent out, and don't quote me on this because I haven't quite got it written down, and do change it, but you're almost like sport was a way of life. Like that, it wasn't like, are you going to play sport? It's like, no, which one are you going to play?
Yeah. Like I grew up in a family where that was very much the question. It wasn't like, do you want to play sport? It's which sport are you going to play? Which I love. Like I loved being told like you're gonna pick one, and then if you don't like it, you can swap. But you're gonna try this thing, and you're gonna give it your all for 6 months or however long a season is.
Yeah. And what sports did you go through early on?
So my first sport was netball. And I was 6. And then my second sport was rugby, and I was 7. But I only played rugby a few times because I was a little girl. I got a bit scared. I didn't go back into rugby until I was 16, 17. And then I played for 4 more years. I played netball until I still play netball, to be honest, but a good 11 years competitively. I did rowing from the time I was 13 till the time I was 19, which was probably the hardest sport I've ever done. And now I do Jiu Jitsu and I play netball on the side.
Yeah. So some people might be listening thinking like, so they don't actually get a choice out there. It's kind of like, they're going to play. Do you feel that was an element of it, or it was just a way of life that there was no need to argue back? It was just like, well, yeah, I am going to pick one.
Yeah, it was more a way of life. Like I was never aggrieved that I had to pick a sport. I loved it. And I think because the weather's nice, like you're always outside, kids are always kicking a ball. I've seen a few like no ball sports signs around where I live in the UK.
Oh yeah.
And it honestly made me so confused the first time. I thought, how can you tell a kid they can't kick a ball? But yeah, at home it's just different. Like you're always outside, you're always playing with some racket or a ball or a stick, and there just wouldn't be an argument with it, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I'm laughing because it just brings back so many memories growing up playing football. Ball goes over people's fences, and the people won't throw them back because they don't want you to play next to their houses, and then somebody ends up climbing over the fence to get their ball back, and then somebody comes out shouting. So it's quite a common thing over here. You know, any piece of grass we used to play, but that didn't always go down well with the owners of the house that we were playing next to.
Oh, that's crazy. I remember I used to just climb fences and get my ball back.
Yeah, I think we're in the phase that my eldest is start playing and constantly going over the fence. We're going to have to put a net up now, otherwise we're going to fall out of our neighbours pretty quickly. So obviously you had an array of sports, which is fantastic. I do believe that kids should play multiple sports. I don't think they should be locked in on one in an early age. Even if they love it, I do believe they should try other things, even if it's just to see if they like it, but also the crossover of movements, I think, is important. You went from one extreme to the other. How do you go from netball and rowing to jiu-jitsu?
Yes, I think I was at an age where, obviously, when you're at school, sport is so easy. It's organized. There's school tournaments. You try out for teams. You're there every day. And then once you're out of that education, and also because we go to high school until we're 18. So I know you guys finish school earlier here, but we don't. So until I was 18, I was in organized sport. And then all my teammates went to different parts of the country. I'm quite picky on who I play a team sport with because I'm very competitive. And so I thought I needed a solo sport that I could do just relying on myself. And because of rugby, I've had experience playing quite, not violent sport, but, quite hands-on, rough and tumble. And I thought, I like martial arts. I've always liked watching it. I don't want to get hit in the face, though. So jiu-jitsu is that middle ground of I can do a thing, get really good at it. It's all by myself, but it's an element of competitiveness in my adult life. And I can also use that as like meditation, which sounds odd, but you have to be in the moment when you're there. Otherwise, things will go wrong and you can't really afford that.
So with the jiu-jitsu there, for people that don't know, because everyone knows it kind of falls under a martial arts, what is different about jiu-jitsu? How does that work as a sport?
Jiu-jitsu is a ground fighting sport. So if you're in a competition, you start standing. The goal is to either you take the person down, depending on the competition. It could be the points where you get points for certain positions and control over your opponent. And then at other times, you can submit them via chokehold or a joint lock, which basically put them in enough pain that they think they'll either pass out or break something, and then they submit. And I like both elements of competition, but I also think it's really empowering being a woman and doing a sport that makes you feel confident in your ability to handle an altercation.
I'm not only impressed, but also terrified about how calmly you said about just choking somebody out or breaking their arm. I'm not sure if I should be impressed or terrified how calm you were about that, Bailey.
No, I get that a lot, to be honest. I have quite a relaxed face that even if I'm in a lot of pain, I've had people say, you look quite psychopathic doing that.
Yeah, but you say about the women in power and about the strength there. I was having this conversation with a client this morning about their deadlifting. And they were talking about getting back into it. And I said, there is a huge difference, right? Just either ego lifting to hit a number or actually being strong enough. You feel like that 90 kg, that 100 kg deadlift will improve your strength, that you can then protect yourself or others, that you can look after yourself. And that then becomes more of a deeper purpose to why you were doing something. Whereas, you're just doing it for ego, it's easy to not do it. So if you've got that deeper purpose, like I said, if it's empowering, if you feel strong, you feel like you can look after yourself, I think that's a huge skill. I do at some point would like my boys to do some form of martial arts, just purely the fact that they have the ability to look after themselves.
Yeah, it makes you walk around with your shoulders a little bit higher and your head up instead of being kind of head down, like avoiding eye contact. I have noticed that if I'm walking, I will easily make eye contact with every single person I walk past. But I've learned that that's actually confidence from training, because before I ever started jiu-jitsu, in social situations, I would be kind of timid and I would just either look at my phone or look at my feet as I'm walking down the street.
It does, all sports brings out the confidence in somebody, because you're in these environments that you're forced into a situation where you've got to be reactive. let alone doing martial arts. I did a very, very small stint of kickboxing as self-defense years ago. I wanted to be able to protect myself. And you quickly find out discipline, fitness, respect, it's supportive as well. You're in these combat situations one-on-one, and you've got people rooting for you to punch somebody in the face or, to protect yourself. So it is fascinating that you can gain all that from sport, especially from a martial arts environment. I do think it's a key thing for a lot of people to experience. I only did a summer and I learned a lot.
Yeah, it is an amazing thing. Both, I think, respect as well that you brought up. Knowing you can hurt someone and then choosing not to do it is a very powerful thing.
So that, teaching yourself restraint as well, control. That's because that's a big thing in martial arts. Because what would happen if you didn't? What would happen if you did go past the mark?
Like, you can do a lot of damage to someone. Like, I've hurt people accidentally in training because it is just the nature of what happens in the sport. But even like if someone, trying to think of a situation. If I was like roughhousing with someone and then they went too far, like I have every ability to physically hurt them, whether that's making them pass out or breaking their arm, yet that's not good for anyone. And knowing I can do that and then choosing not to is kind of a confidence builder in my own ability to like be calm and be present and like know that I can be the bigger person if it ever came to it.
What I've been intrigued by is right at the start of our conversation today, you spoke about New Zealand being this us in sport. Nobody's better than the other. And you've been brought up in this environment, yet you chose to want to do something solo, to almost step away a little bit from that upbringing of, netball, rugby. How come you chose to step away from something that was so deeply ingrained?
With training jiu-jitsu, even though it's a solo sport, when you go to competition, it's just you versus someone else. There's still such a huge team aspect. Like everyone in your gym, if you're at a good gym, wants you to be better at the sport, because if you're better and you train with someone else, you're going to make them better. So it's the same mentality, but also to challenge myself in a way that I never competed on my own. I've always had teammates to rely on, to help lift me up, to give me an extra boost, and to go into something where it's just me and one other person, and that other person wants to hurt me, is so daunting but really exciting. So it was a personal challenge, definitely, with the same morals of the sports I grew up with as well.
That's interesting. Did you know it had the same morals, or did you just find that out once you got into it?
I found out once I got into it, definitely.
Yeah, we've had a lot of solo athletes on the show, and they've said the same sort of thing. Like, yes, it is you in there in the moment, yet it's still a huge team sport with your coach and the other fighters or whatever that's in the gym. That you're all on the same page, you're all doing the same thing, and it's a kind of a lifting up environment rather than somebody trying to be the best. So it's interesting you end up finding an environment by accident that was kind of what you were used to. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it was probably the being drawn to something that I knew. I just kind of naturally found my way into a place where I realized, oh, this is exactly what I'm used to, and I fit perfectly in this spot.
Yeah. If I can go on record to quote you on this, you said, "I wouldn't be who I am today without sports."
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. That's quite a bold statement.
Oh, it is bold, but like hand on heart, I know that that's true. God, where do I even start? I would say probably when I was about 13, 14. So unfortunately, my dad passed at that time, so I was really young. And I kind of had two options. I could funnel all my anger and being upset into sport, or I could think, don't want to do sport anymore, kind of want to go off the rails. Like, I've just lost my dad. Let me go get up to no good. And I consciously remember, even at that age, thinking, I can see those two different paths and I'm going to choose sport, because at least I know that choosing sport would make my dad proud and it will make me a better human. And at the time, I was rowing in the summer, playing netball in the winter. And in the summer, do you know much about rowing?
A little bit from the Olympics and stuff, yeah.
It is the hardest sport I've ever done and the most grueling and time-consuming thing ever. Like, you're training morning and night up to 14 times a week, even as a kid. And so I was just put in this environment where everyone's around you. Everyone's there to lift you up. If I had a day where I don't feel good, that's okay, because everyone in the boat will push more for me. And then when they're having a bad day, I'll push more for them. And it instilled a sense of community and being able to, like, for other people to bear load for you when things aren't good. And I then carried those values into like the rest of my life, and especially when it came to sport, I made sure that if my teammate wasn't feeling good, I'd work extra hard for them, because I remember when I wasn't feeling good at times. It gave me discipline. You have to be so disciplined when you're training that much, with when you're going to bed, what you're eating, how you're resting, how you're showing up, punctuality. I hate being late, and I think that's because once I was late and everyone had to run, and that was my fault. So I'm always early. Teamwork, discipline, confidence, getting back out there when you lose, because you're not always going to be the winner, and then also being gracious when you do win, because you know how it feels to lose. And just the continued, like, a season would end and I would feel like that was really tough. I don't know if I want to do it again. But every single year I went back until I physically couldn't go back anymore, because it was over. And yeah, it gave me lifelong friends, but lifelong skills as well.
That community bit's such a massive bit. Like, I remember when I was playing, and I remember a couple of guys on other teams that had potentially lost parents as well whilst playing, yet they were kind of like back playing for their team not long afterwards. And it's something you never really understand, but you kind of, it still shocks you how quickly they could be back in it. But you see how quickly that community jumps there to support you, fans, owners, coaches, players. And it's really interesting to know from your perspective that, you opted for sport, and it was, potentially one of the best decisions you made. For all we know, it could have been life-saving, knowing that you had that community to fall back on. And I think a lot of people need to know that part, is the community of sport is so strong in all areas of sport. I believe even in the big ones, they still come down to these smaller sections. Did it ever cross your mind to go off the rails, or was it always just going to be sport?
It did cross my mind, but I think what stopped me is that I have a brother, and my brother, his choice was to go off the rails, and he's a little bit older than me, so I could like see that future. And I think instinctually, like, when you're really upset and when you lose someone, especially at that age, you're a bit like, just want to get all this anger out. But I just knew that it wasn't worth it.
No, it's fantastic. You were able to see that at really a young age as well, to be able to do that and bring yourself out. And what I like there, you were kind of talking about key skills that sport had brought you. Discipline often gets brought up as kind of a negative word. been disciplined. But that's what it was, right? You turned up late and everybody got punished, or we got fined a lot. 1 minute or 1 second after the clock, we were fined. And I don't know about you, but for me now, if I'm early, I'm on time, and if I'm on time, I'm late, and that's come from sport.
Yeah, I feel the same. I often the thought of even being late to anything gives me such anxiety.
Yeah, I don't like it. I'm more than happy to be 30 minutes early than 30 seconds late.
Yeah. Even 1 second late is too many seconds.
Too many. So what else was there then that you kind of have taken away from sport? Is there any other key areas or lessons that you now use within your coaching or your life?
Oh, sports psychology was a huge one. So we were lucky enough. I think it's quite common in New Zealand, but when you play sport, especially at a high level, you have a sports psychologist. So we did so much work around mindset and how we talk to ourselves and how we talk to other people and how we reframe losses. And I take a lot of those into both my everyday life and coaching other clients. I think it's very natural for us to loathe and self-hatred or beat ourselves up when something doesn't go right or we think we should be doing more or better. But I always try to, when I hear those thoughts come up, as they naturally would, I would reframe into more positive things that I would get told in sport, but relate to every day as well. Trying to think of some examples, but even just the way you talk to yourself if you're training. And if you're saying, oh, this is really hard, I can't wait for this to be over. Just those little switches of, I'm so lucky I can do this. And look how strong I am, or look how much progress I've made, or I've gotten here. But next time I want to be just 1% better. And it makes you feel totally different to the situation.
Reframes are so powerful. I don't know about you, but one thing I notice quite a lot is people are willing to acknowledge the positive, but they're very quick to put it down. So I went for a run today, but I didn't beat my score. It was rubbish. Didn't run very well at all. Huh? Is it positive or is it negative? Which one is it? And again, just shifting that reframe from eliminating to, and actually, no, I'm proud you went for it. We learned a lot from that, and leave it at that. And completely eliminating the negative is so powerful for wanting to do it again and then wanting to compound those runs over months rather than just being negative and not wanting to do it again.
Yeah. No, I'm the same, especially running. My sports have never been long distance running ever, but it's a habit I've just started to build. And even yesterday I went for a run and I thought, oh, this is not the run I wanted to do. It was really hard. But again, I had to say, no, you went for a run. You actually did what you said you were going to do. Yeah, it's hard, but you just don't like being not good at something.
I think that's very normal as well, though, isn't it? That's just our mammal brain trying to keep us safe. If we bruise our ego, it hurts. It hurts. If we say that we're going to win and we lose, people criticize you. If for instance, when we're recording this, England are about to play in the semi-finals on Wednesday. If all the players went out and said we're winning on Wednesday and we lost, they'd be absolutely ridiculed from having the confidence to say it. So I think that's something deeply ingrained in us, that we avoid having the confidence. Some people might call it arrogance, but the most successful people in sport are highly confident and borderline, if not fully, arrogant.
Yeah, I agree. There are so many people that you look at in sport and it comes off as arrogance, but it's just confidence and self-belief. And if they don't have that, then their performance could slowly start to slip away from them.
Definitely. So when did the coaching element start to come in for you? Because if anybody on here listening isn't aware, there is a huge difference between personal training and coaching, whether that's behavior change, mindset, life coaching. There is a difference. There's some crossover, but I've found so much success in coaching. compared to what I was gaining in personal training. So where did that shift start to happen for you?
So I started coaching while I was still at school. So my last year of high school, I started coaching netball because it was not as much of a time commitment for me as the coach. So I coached like our junior premier team, and in reality, I only started because I wanted to give back, and I thought netball gave me a lot, so I'm going to give back. So I did 3 years of coaching, and I loved it. I loved watching them develop, both on skill level, but more so as people, as young teenagers, and their confidence would grow as well. Then while I was at university, I coached rowing for 4 years, and 4 years is like a whole high school career. So I got a group of girls when they were fresh novices, and I took them all the way through to their final year. And the amount of growth as people, the amount of skill development, mindset shift, like these girls went from being didn't even know how to hold their oars or their handles to winning titles. Like a couple of them got offered scholarships for American universities, and that was the most proud I think I've ever been in my coaching career, like still to date, was just seeing them through. And again, I only started because rowing really was the catalyst in my life, and I thought I need to give some of that back. And I was lucky enough to give that to a group of girls who, in each of them, I saw little bits of myself. So it felt very rewarding to be there, especially over such a long period of time.
And isn't that the way that sport has formed you into the person that you are today? And it's no different for the athletes you had there, and that it's not about it's never really about winning the Olympics for rowing. It's about creating great human beings who are resilient, who are fit and healthy, who understand discipline and respect. And athletes are just forming into great human beings if it's seen that way, and it's not all about the accolades and and the medals.
Yeah, exactly. And I see them now, and they're at the age that I was when I was coaching them, and like they've just grown into such like strong women who are like doing great things, and it's still rewarding for me to look at them and go, I think I helped a little bit with that.
I think you did. And how does that work now for what you do with coaching away from sports? Because obviously we have similar beliefs with psychology, human behavior, habits. How have you found that shift from not coaching a sport team but coaching humans?
I do love it, but I also miss sport. But that's very specific. Like I think I miss the sporting environment because I was coaching people exactly like me, going through the same struggles when I was very vulnerable. So it was like a very healing thing for me to do. But now I love that I get to coach people from so many different walks of life, and the challenges are so different as well. Like I still learn every day, no matter who I'm talking to. Like there's so much to learn that you're never done as a coach. And it is more rewarding in different ways. Like these people are parents and they have children and families to take care of, and the changes might be more subtle, but they're more powerful considering they're affecting whole families or relationships or people's careers. So it's a different ball game, but I like both of them.
It is. And yeah, coaching an athlete to coaching somebody who's just looking maybe for life performance or body transformation, it is different. How do you help those people transfer their skills? Because you've been very open right from the start that you've seen it all the way through. You said without sport, you wouldn't be who you are today. So you've seen the transfer of skills, which is great. I didn't see it till later on in my life. It was a few years ago that I woke up to it. So how do you now help clients see that transfer a lot quicker?
Sometimes they don't see it. I just implement it for them. I use lots of things that we used to use as athletes, or my coaching team used to use, like about goals. If they come to me with, say, a physique goal or a weight loss goal, let's turn that into a performance goal. Like, that makes everything way more fun. And I've got clients that run lots of marathons. I've got a client that just did a huge charity run, and when they came to me, that wasn't what their idea of what they wanted was. But little by little, you kind of put in these little, you plant seeds, and then over time they grow. And then I try and shift people to a performance way of thinking, and not just like, how can I do the craziest thing in the fastest time, but like, how can I recover better and sleep better and perform better day to day and perform better in my confidence and my relationships, and like just be an all-round better version of themselves.
So do you use fitness challenges a lot, or is it kind of any form of challenge you feel will benefit the individual?
Any form of challenge. Like, even some of the challenges with clients recently have been like a social challenge, like go to a networking event or go to a coffee shop and start a conversation with someone. Like, and there've been a few, like, put yourself out there and apply for some jobs that you don't think that would be good for you, or you don't think that you would get, and see what happens. I have someone at the moment who, we've done a lot of fitness work, but they were just feeling a bit flat on life, and we figured out it was their job, long story short. So they just text me on the weekend and said that they had got a job offer, which, like, yeah, that's not fitness, but that has happened because of the fitness journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's that performance-based thing. Life is a performance. We are all, in some way, daily athletes. Because if we're not waking up and performing at work or at home or as a parent, then there will be stress and there'll be negativity. So we don't have to. I had this discussion with somebody on the last episode, where we perceive athletes is a lot higher than what actually it is. We are, in a way, our own athletes. We're just not super elite professionals. So we still need to look after ourselves, which then has a carryover to have the confidence to make a decision with work, which then helps reduce stress. If you came across somebody with a bit of resistance, like you said, they go to a networking event and they're like, nah, I can't go to a networking event. How would you then help them through that phase of resistance?
Well, there's a difference between the resistance of someone that actually wants to do it and is ready, and then the resistance of someone that says they're ready, but all actions say like they're actually not ready for change. If someone's genuinely ready, it's a lot of exposure therapy. Like, what's the tiniest morsel step that we could take now that is going to make you feel better about it later, or get you closer to the end goal? And that could be things like, okay, well, before we go to the networking event, maybe invite a friend so that you're not going alone. Just like little tiny easy things that are going to make the big thing seem so much smaller.
Yeah, all about breaking it down. What we think is simple is often not very simple at all if we're not doing it.
Yeah.
Got to simplify. But if there's somebody listening today that is struggling with the transfer of skills, or is playing sport but is struggling in another area of their life, is there something that you can give them today to help them take action?
So playing sport, I think if you're good at one thing, like if you're good at sport and you're struggling with something else, you have to think about that something else like sport. Like, I did it a lot with business, especially when I first started, and even now, I thought I can show up to all my trainings and I can do all the right things in sport, but I'm lacking in business. Why is that? Well, that's just another version of the same game. So if I can structure business like I do sport, then I can apply those same foundations to business. And sometimes people really, really good with business, who are really, really good at their jobs, use that same structure for fitness or for sport or training or whatever the goal is. That we all have strengths, so we need to play to those strengths.
Another version of the same game. Love that. That makes so much sense. They see it as another game or where you're successful. Do you have an example maybe from what you did where you were struggling with business? Is there something, a certain skill that you took over and went, yeah, that worked?
Mine was just systematically breaking everything down. Like in sport or training for anything, you think, okay, competition's in 4 weeks. I need to do this many trainings. I'm going to do this on this day at training. So with business, it was like, okay, that's my goal with clients. What are the inputs that are going to get me there? Be really specific. Which of those should I do on what day? So it's structured, and then doing it. So it's basically like having a training plan, but for business.
Yeah, and I like the way you've almost kind of worked it back, which is a big strategy a lot of people use, where you start the tournament date or the game and you're like, right, the tournament's on this date, so I need to do all of these things beforehand because that's fixed. It was actually a copywriter told me to use that for a launch once. She kept saying, when are you launching your next thing? I was like, I don't know. She's like, pick a date. What date? Tell me right now. And I went, right, that one. And she went, okay, now work back from there. Tell everybody that's the date. Now you've got to put in the work to get to that point. And guess what? I made it easily because I put the date. I did everything systematically. So I think that's a really useful strategy that a lot of people procrastinate because there is no fixed point. Whereas if you fix a point and work back, the pressure's on now, and we always find a way.
Yeah, that's like, I forget the name of the law, but that the time we spend on something will expand to the time that we allocate it. So if it's fixed and we only have an hour, we'll spend an hour on it. But if we have 3 days, we'll do it for 3 days, but we realistically will just drag it out until the last hour and get it done.
Yeah, I'm sure we've all been there. Bailey, what's next for you?
What's next? Oh, I'm going on holiday in August because the UK has provided me with no summer, so I need a break. I will be away. I will be then launching a Q4 short course for a cohort of people, and that'll lead me into the end of 2024, and then hopefully maybe see my family at some stage.
Have you got anything in mind for this next phase of your traveling? Is there a date in mind that you think you might be looking to move away?
It's all kind of up in the air at the moment. So I have nothing concrete, but I just know that I need a holiday, and then after the holiday, that's future Bailey's problem.
Yeah, where are you going? Anywhere nice?
I'll be spending my birthday in Greece and Croatia, so it'll be lovely.
Love those two places, two of my favorite places.
Any recommendations?
I just love Greek food, love Greek and Cypriot food and beer, and then Croatia. Yeah, two places I've been to, Hvar and Dubrovnik, just lovely places. It's just, yeah, you'll have the best time. If anyone wanted to find you and learn more about what you do coaching wise, or just wanted to chat with you, where's the best place they can find you?
LinkedIn, always LinkedIn. I don't like any other platform.
Yeah, there's a common theme of this podcast. There's a lot of guests from LinkedIn, but it's a fantastic community networking platform. Once you find your people, a lot of people have a misconception of it from what it was in the past. It's not the same platform anymore. But like anything in life, you've got to put the work in. And if you put the work in, you get to find people that you can go on their podcast, to come on yours, to network with, to be your clients. Like it is a fantastic place to be. I love it.
Yeah, agreed. It's a great platform. So if
So
anyone
is it
needs,
just under your name?
yeah, just Bailey Walters. I should be quite easy to find.
You say that, but have you ever typed in your name? So I've typed in mine, and it isn't that easy.
Oh no, but I'm going to do that right now.
It might be a good idea. Bailey, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I love how it's driven into the mentality and the environment early on, and that allows you to kind of blossom and grow with it. Whereas nothing really forced, it's just a way of living. And I think we can take that a lot of that away from anybody here. Don't wait for the government or sporting bodies to do it. We can influence that ourselves by, how we coach others or how we parent, and kind of create that environment ourselves. So yeah, it's really interesting to hear a side of it from a kind of a different culture growing up as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was really nice, and it's nice to share a bit more about New Zealand. And we're just such a small island on the bottom of the earth that no one really gets to talk about it. But thank you, Shaun.
No, thank you so much. And thank you for everybody that's joining in. If you took anything away from today's episode, please subscribe, add a review, share it with a friend. All we're looking to do in these episodes is just help one person each episode. If that was you, then we're winning. If it wasn't you, but somebody can benefit, you sharing it on could change their life. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day. And remember, there is always another game.